Hey guys, it's Harley. Today I'm going to be telling you my 15 plant recommendations for beginner plant owners. Every plant is easy once you get to know it, but I do think that a lot of the time the recommendations people give for beginners are kind of vague in that, yes, they're easy, but like you still need to get to know the plant, you know? So with each plant, I'll be giving you its basic care so you can pick some plants that work for you and your tendencies with your plants. If you're an overwaterer or an underwaterer, there are some options that may be better for you than the other. Did that make sense? These are the plants I recommend starting out with and that I wish I had stuck to in the beginning. I kind of started venturing like outside of the basic plants pretty quickly, and let's just say I learned my lesson, okay? I was not meant to do that. I needed to take some time to get to know plant ownership a little bit more and how much actually goes into it. So yeah, let's go. Number one is of course Pothos. I'm pretty sure everybody can agree on this, and I will venture out and say that I think that pretty much any variety of Pothos you can get is going to be pretty easy to take care of in the beginning. So here I have a golden Pothos. It's difficult to overwater or underwater, so pretty much no matter what your tendency is, that way it'll be fine. And then also whatever light you put it in, it's going to be fine. Just something to consider is the more light it gets, the more it's going to form the gold variegation on its leaves, and the less light it gets, the less it's going to be variegated that way. But then another Pothos variety that I highly recommend if you can snag one up is a Cebu Blue. Those are really awesome plants, and what I like about that one is it really tells you when it needs water. So the leaves on that one, more so than even the golden Pothos, is the leaves will kind of droop down and just look a little bit sad when it's time to water. So yeah, these are great options. Next up is a ZZ plant, and the ZZ again is another one I feel everybody can agree on because they are so low maintenance. You don't have to water these guys very often. I maybe water mine once every 2 weeks and it's done really well. It's probably doubled in size since I got it. One thing to say about this one in lighting is that it doesn't like any direct light. It can survive in lower light conditions, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's thriving, and the growth will slow. The new growth may come in smaller, like you can see right here. The new growth is like extra small. Really wonderful option for those of you who tend to not water as often as most plants really like. So if you're kind of forgetting about your plants or neglecting them a little bit, this is a great option and it'll probably be fine. Alrighty, next up is an arrowhead plant, of course. I definitely couldn't do a video without talking about arrowhead plants because you know how much I love them. They're my favorite. Something about arrowhead plants is that not all varieties are the same. So ones that have colored variegation or just complete colored leaves are a little bit more difficult to manage. So maybe stick to more of the more green varieties in the beginning if possible, and then ease your way into the colored ones. Specifically the pink one is a little bit more difficult, so just keep that in mind. What I love about these is it's another one that if you tend to neglect your plants, it'll be fine for you. So you can go quite some time between watering these. For mine, I keep a really good watch on my plants, but I wait until I notice drooping because they are very susceptible to root rot, and if you're overwatering them, then that's the easiest way to kill one of these. They can do really well in a lot of different light requirements. Again, it kind of depends on the variegation or the variety you have. I don't own any varieties in my collection that like bright direct light. Keep them in a bright indirect light with no direct rays hitting them, otherwise their leaves do bleach fairly quickly. Syngonium. Alrighty, next up we have the Monstera, which this is like the most popular plant, I think. Is it? What do you think the most popular plant is? For me, I think it's Monstera. Anyway, it is popular for a reason. It's really, really beautiful and it grows pretty quickly. The reason I think that this is a beginner plant is it can do so well in a lot of different light requirements. It's not too prone to root rot, and it's also not too prone to drying out really quickly, so it can handle some neglect, which I know as a beginner it's really easy to under or over care for your plants. I know I was there in the beginning. I think we all go through that, but this one is a really rewarding option. If you're just getting into it, I don't know if it was just me in the beginning or if you feel this way as well, but I didn't want to go out and spend a lot of money on a lot of new plants because I didn't know what I was going to be able to keep alive. Well, okay, I actually did end up spending a lot of plants, but in hindsight, I wouldn't recommend doing that. So you can also take cuttings, propagate your Monstera plant, like easier almost than any other plant, I would say, and have new more plants for free. Next up is a rubber tree, specifically the burgundy rubber tree. Rubber trees are pretty easy to care for, and again, they're one that really tell you when they're thirsty. So if you kind of start to notice the leaves are like pulling a this kind of a thing, you can kind of see right here, this guy might be ready to be watered. Then go ahead and water it, and it's really as easy as that. They don't do very well in low light. If you're wanting to get a plant and you just have low light, I maybe wouldn't recommend this one. Pretty much like every other plant, not all varieties are the same, and definitely some of the more variegated varieties such as the finicky and then the strawberry and cream. What else is there? Oh, there's so many different varieties, but the more variegation and color it has on it, the more difficult the plant tends to be. I mean, that's not always the case. If you're just starting out and you haven't really had a rubber tree before, I would definitely recommend sticking to the burgundy variety because again, it's one of the easiest to care for. Next up is a maybe not so common plant, the Sissis, specifically the Sissis Rombafolia. I actually also brought a rotundifolia to show you because I do think both of these are pretty easy options, although the Rombafolia is a lot easier. This plant I would recommend to people who are eyeing ivy. I don't know if it's just me or if other people experience this as well, but a lot of people consider ivy to be an easy, beginner-friendly plant, but I struggled with it more than any plant. In fact, I don't even own regular ivy anymore. So I think that the Sissis Rombafolia is a great option if you think ivy is beautiful, but you don't dare deal with it. Ivy really develops spider mites so easily. In my experience also, this guy's a lot more tolerant of stuff like that. This one is a really fun beginner plant. It does like high light, and as far as care needs, pretty much all it needs is watered maybe once every 7 to 10 days. Once the soil is pretty much completely dry, then you'll just go ahead and give it a good watering, plop it back in front of that window. I have mine in front of an eastern window, like right next to the window, and it's really happy there. But what's cool about this plant, wow, I feel like I'm not even breathing. What's cool about this plant, I think you can see right here, is as it vines, it gets these things. That's the technical word, these things. I don't know what they're called, but they really just grab on to anything that they can. And like once you start to see one pop out, you can kind of lead it to grow certain ways. That's a really cool like bonus thing about this plant. But yeah, I think it's a really easy one and pretty tolerant of over or under watering, so that's always nice, right? Number 7 is a money tree, which I only recently got my first money tree, but it's one I definitely wish I would have gotten sooner in my plant keeping obsession because it really is such a low maintenance, beautiful, fast growing, really unique plant. So the one I have is a little bit of a bigger plant, but what I like about this one for beginners specifically is A, it grows quickly. So instant gratification kind of a thing, that's always nice, right? It's really rewarding to watch slow plants grow, but it's also really rewarding to like see new growth almost every single day, and that's the case for the money tree. Not only that, it does well in, again, a lot of light settings, so I keep mine in front of a west window and it's really happy there. It doesn't like too bright or too hot direct like sunlight, but pretty much other than that, it'll be fine wherever. Oh my gosh, I did that and some dirt went in my eye. Hang on, I gotta go get this out. Whew. That honestly felt, when it hit my eye, it felt like it was a big rock. And then when I got it out, it was like the tiniest speck of dirt. Teeny tiny, could barely see it. Ain't that the darndest? Anyway, where was I? Oh, what I like about the money tree is that I like this one because it's really easy to get to know, and I think that that's an important aspect of beginner houseplants is they're kind of the starting off point into getting to know like plant care and some signs to look for and things like that. So the money tree is very vocal, I don't know how else to say it, expressive maybe about what it's feeling. So the leaves will droop, they'll change color. I kind of think that the plants that are more expressive that way are easier because there are a lot of plants out there that if you make a wrong move, instead of telling you it's a wrong move, it just like dies right away, especially like Hoya and Peperomia, but not naming names or anything. I definitely think that the money tree is a great option. Another beginner friendly plant I think is skinned Abscess plants. I have 2 varieties in my collection and they both are so easy and again very expressive about their needs, and they do well in a lot of different light. In fact, they do very, very well in pretty low light conditions, not like no light conditions, but it can do fine. It just won't grow as quickly. What I like about these ones is the leaves will kind of start to curl like one by one. This guy's not thirsty yet, but maybe you can see like right here. is my larger skinned Abscess plant. When it's well watered, all of the leaves lay flat, completely flat, and they just look like a board. Once it starts to get thirsty, more and more leaves will kind of start to curl a little bit. Then you know it's time to water. And when about half the plant is curled that way, then I'll go ahead and thoroughly water, and it's a really good gauge on when it's thirsty, so it's not being overwatered. Although I will say this plant is fairly susceptible to root rot, but if you're watching for those signs, it's going to be a really easy option for just starting out. Just don't over care. You know, I know it's hard. Number 9 is a burro's tail or a donkey's tail, and a lot of people think they're the same plant. They're actually pretty similar. I don't know which one's which, but one of them has like the pointy, the little bean things that grow out of them, the fleshy leaves. One of them is a little bit pointier and one of them is a little more rounded. So I'm not sure which one is which, but they have the same care needs. If you're into succulents, I think this is a really, really awesome one because it trails and it's really beautiful and unique. It's not as easy to kill as a string of pearls plant, and pretty much if you stick it in bright light, it's going to do just fine for you. And again, very expressive about what it needs. When the plant's thirsty, the little fleshy leaf things, I don't know what they're called on succulents. Are they called leaves? They start to wrinkle and kind of look like a deflated balloon. That's how you know it's time to water. If they're plump and really full looking, then it doesn't need any more water. And if you water when all of the little fleshy things are full, then the odds of root rot goes way, way up. You guys know how much I love my lipstick plants. I talk about this baby all the time. Pretty good for beginners because A, it grows quickly, very rewarding to keep. It blooms all the time as long as you're giving it bright light, watering it not excessively, then it'll be fine. And on that note of watering it excessively, if you forget to water this a few times, it'll bounce back. It's not one of those that if you forget to water it one time, it dies. One thing I will say about this one, if you're thinking to keep this plant, is to keep it pulled back from the window, especially if you live somewhere where it gets cold. The leaves do discolor a little bit. They turn kind of yellow on the edges if the plant gets too cold because it is really succulent-y and full of water. Just make sure you're not keeping it too close to any like super cold temperatures. When it's thirsty, the leaves wrinkle. Once most of the leaves on this plant are wrinkled, then I'll go ahead and thoroughly water it, and I do prefer to bottom water this plant, although it's not totally necessary. Lipstick plant. Next up is a Peperomia obtusifolia. Peperomia are another type where different varieties are extremely different as far as care goes. Like, they're probably the most different in my opinion across the board care wise. I do think this one is the best option for beginners because A, it's pretty forgiving, and B, a lot of Peperomia plants are very susceptible to root rot. So even like a tiny bit of overwatering, it seems like they get stem or root rot and they die pretty quickly. But this one kind of has more thick stems, so it's not as prone to that as some of the other varieties. If you have a variegated variety, it does need a little bit higher light than the unvariegated variety, but if you're looking for a variegated plant as a beginner, I definitely recommend this one because you kind of get the cool look of variegation without all the extra care requirements. Peperomia obtusifolia, specifically the variegata. I recommend a bird of paradise plant. Bird of paradise are ones that you kind of think would be high maintenance and super diva plants, but they're actually really, really easy to care for. They are so happy as long as they get adequate lighting. I don't know, I keep mine like literally right here and it has done really well. So this one's one that gets huge so fast. This one grows really fast, and as long as it's getting that adequate lighting, getting watered, then it's fine. So, I mean, it's not too picky at all about maintenance, which is nice. Although I will say this one, the leaves tend to rip really easily, so be careful of that. If that look bugs you, then I don't know if I'd recommend it for you, but I think it's kind of cool. Next up are Aglaonema or Chinese evergreens, specifically the Valentine variety. I've owned a lot of different Chinese evergreen varieties, and I've found the Valentine to be the easiest to care for, especially if you're wanting a pink plant. I water this maybe once every 2 weeks. I actually need to water it now, and it's done fine. So this pot, I got it a year ago. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but it was just this one large stem right here, and now it's just popped out so many babies. This is a plant that can do well in low light. That can't be said about a lot of plants. A lot of plants that people consider low light plants really are like dying super slow deaths, and that's probably the case for this one too. This, more than any other plant in my collection, when I have it in lower light, I do still notice growth, which I don't know, I think that means it's doing okay. Chinese evergreen. Next up is a Philodendron Brazil, which I think you can see it, yeah, right here. This plant is happy pretty much wherever you put it, so the more light it gets, the more color there's going to be on the leaves. So you can see I moved this from a lower light situation into a little bit of a higher light situation. The new growth is extremely lime green and yellowy. I really like that. It grows fast. It droops again when it needs water, so you don't have to worry too much about the guessing game as to when it needs watered. So I really appreciate that, and I think it's a really awesome philodendron option for beginners. Last up is a Norfolk Island Pine. I love this plant. I don't think it's too popular really, but I think it's so unique and really different from anything else you really keep indoors, you know. This was one of my first plants. Yeah, the one thing I will say on this one is that the soil, it does like the soil to stay a little bit more moist. That's not to say it needs to be kept watered at all times. You can kind of let the top few inches of soil dry out, but then be sure to give it a good watering. This one can do well in pretty much any light. Again, this is one that's going to grow more quickly in higher light. It doesn't like any direct light at all. Otherwise the little fronds will dry up and fall off. So if you start to notice that, just move it away from the direct light source. If you also notice that happening and it's not getting any direct light, that just means it needs a little bit more water. Really, you don't have to worry too much about this one. I don't know, it's just like a little quirky plant. Kind of awkward looking, a little bit weird, but I love it. You a little cutie, you know that? You very cute. Those are all 15 of the houseplants I think are perfect for beginners. Let me know if you agree or disagree on any of my picks. I won't be offended. People disagree all the time, especially in the plant world, you know? It's fine. We can disagree and we can talk about it. If you have any other excellent beginner houseplant options that I forgot to mention, then definitely leave them in the comments down below. As always, all the products I use for my plants, my favorite products, are linked in the description box if you're interested in trying some of the products I've tried and personally love. Yeah, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.